Hello and welcome to Take the Lead Presents Virtual Happy Hour. We're glad you're here. I'm Gloria Felt, co-founder and president of Take the Lead. We host virtual happy hours on the second Wednesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We interview women who take the lead in their own lives and careers. So you have 1 hour once a month to boost your career. It's a quick, easy, and fun way to learn what other smart, interesting role model women are up to too. Please tweet your questions to @TakeLeadWomen or type them into the chat box. We want to hear from you and we'll get those questions answered. Take the Lead's mission is nothing less than leadership gender parity by 2025. Visit www.taketheleadwomen.com to find training programs for yourself and your organization. You can also find mentoring, coaching, role model events, and great content to help you on your journey. That's www.taketheleadwomen.com. Now, make yourself comfortable. Grab a cocktail, a mocktail, tea, coffee, glass of water, whatever you like, and sit back for an inspiring virtual happy hour.
Hi, a grateful welcome to you. I'm Michelle Weldon, editorial director at Take the Lead, sitting in tonight for Gloria Felt, co-founder and president of Take the Lead. I'm so pleased to be joined by my co-host and friend, Jovanka Ciaras, director of operations at Take the Lead and a wise and awesome colleague. She's sitting in for co-host Reshma Gopaldis, vice president of video for She Media. I wish all of our guests and participants tonight an abundant and gratitude-filled November. As it's the month of Thanksgiving, we're all about giving back and sharing our time, energy, and resources as leaders to make this a fair and more just world for women. So this virtual happy hour is all about giving back with gratitude, making a difference. Jovanka, I know you are involved in so many different events and activities and travel. How do you find time to make a difference?
Ooh, I wish I had more time to make a difference. First of all, hello everybody. Thank you for having us. I wish I had more time to make a difference. I certainly, try the best as I can to use some of my resources to volunteer. And based on the research that I've done regarding our two guests, I am definitely not doing enough. So I'm hoping to get some nuggets from them and hopefully learn how to use my time more smartly and hopefully give back.
Thanks, and I am hoping to learn so much tonight as well from our great.
Oh, I think we lost Michelle. She actually froze. Can the rest of you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see if while Michelle unfreezes herself, I think what we can do is go ahead and introduce our two guests for the night. Since that was my job, hopefully we can get that done. So we are really lucky to have these two marvelous guests this evening. We have Tamra Ryan, which is the lady in gray with the curly hair. Hello, Tamra.
Hello.
Is the CEO of Women's Bean Project, a social enterprise based in Denver that provides transitional employment to women attempting to break the cycle of chronic unemployment and poverty. She is the board chair of the Social Enterprise Alliance and is the recipient of the Judith F. M. Kaufman Award for Civil Entrepreneurship presented by the Denver Foundation. On top of that, in 2012, she was named one of Colorado's up-and-coming most influential women by the Denver Post and was a speaker at TEDx Mile High. Tamra is the author of The Third Law. Welcome, Tamra.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And of course, we also have Mae Whiteside. She is the president and CEO of CKL Engineers, LLC Chicago, and the winner of the 2018 Engineering Excellence Honor Award. She is a trained civil engineer and served as a board member to San Martin de Porres House of Hope, a substance abuse recovery home for women and children. Mae is a member of the Lumen Cordium Society at the Archdiocese of Chicago, the Economic Club of Chicago, American Society of Civil Engineers, American Council of Engineering Companies, and a Great Rivers Chicago philanthropist. Her goal is to increase pipeline opportunities in STEM for more African-American girls. Welcome, Mae.
Thank you.
Oh my God, you guys are so busy. I'm wondering, when do you have time for all of this? Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your time and resources with us. We are so grateful. Before I ask you the first question and to allow Michelle some time to get back to us, I just wanted to tell the audience to make sure that you tweet your questions at Take Lead Women. Put them in the chat box. We have our trusted social media manager lady who's going to be sharing some nuggets of wisdom on Twitter. But if you have any questions for our guest, this is your time to ask. And make sure that you use the hashtag Take the Lead Women and use your voice. So I know Michelle had a beautiful question for you, Mae, but before we get started, we allow Michelle to come back. I am going to ask, I guess we'll start with Mae. We always start with the first question. How did you get to be you? And the challenge is, hopefully you'll get to do that in 2 minutes or less.
Okay, how did I get to be me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say in terms of drawing the strength that it takes to be me came from my childhood. I had a very struggling childhood where my mom and I experienced homelessness for 10 years. And so I've had to learn how to pretty much bet on myself, depend on myself for the things that I need. And that's where I pretty much drew that strength. But in terms of being an engineer and a civic person, it really came from my mom also just saying, go for education and see what it is that you like. And when I looked at the bulletin for IIT, I saw that civil engineering closely matched my dream of helping others, which meant that, you know, I'm designing and building parks and streets and roads and transit and all that stuff. And even with my civic engagement, because of some of the struggles that I had growing up, it fueled always the civic part where let's figure out how to best include everybody, be a more inclusive person. So I guess all those things wrapped up to who I am today.
Wonderful. And somehow you did that in less than a minute.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Tamra?
Well, gosh, it's a great question to start from because it forces it gets serious right away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I was really fortunate. I grew up in Colorado Springs, you know, in a middle-class family, but from the very beginning, my mom tells me when I was 4, I said, "Mommy, when can I start kindergarten so that I can go to college?" And so from the very beginning, I just knew that I wanted something more for my life. I ended up getting 2 science degrees, which then doesn't make any sense for what I ended up doing with my career. But I think the theme has been that when there have been opportunities, I've sort of said, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I've also fairly early in my career thought about what I call my park bench analysis. And that is when I'm 80, sitting on a park bench, looking back at my life, what will I regret not having done? And so that's sort of become, anytime there's something comes up, whether it is a volunteer opportunity or a career opportunity, I ask myself that. And it helps me make the decision because I think that if it forces maybe or allows me to do things that I might not have otherwise done. I'm the eldest of 4 children, and I think that curse has given me the sense of responsibility, and so a lot of what I've done over the past 16 or so years has been about feeling this responsibility that I feel I have to tell other people's stories and to perhaps be part of giving people opportunity that I have had that they haven't. And that might be just because of the accident of birth. Okay. And so I think it's very humbling when you realize that really, except for the accident of birth, your life might have turned out very differently. Yeah. So that has given me a sense of responsibility that I think is really carried over into all aspects of my life today, whether that's my interaction with my children or my interaction, you know, with my work or my volunteerism or the community in general.
Wonderful. And you know, I feel like the 3 of us have that one thing in common, which is we are aware of the fact that education and those, the ability to educate ourselves, we knew early on that it was going to get us out of wherever we were and give us the opportunity to eventually give back. And that is a very similar path that I took. I grew up in Puerto Rico, in what's considered a lower middle class family. At the time, we didn't think we were lower middle class. We were just doing what we needed to do. And but my father was adamant about education. He was so passionate about the idea that he wanted his children to do better than he ever could. And he recognized that education was the path to get us forward. But in that process, we always were aware of the fact that we had opportunities that millions or billions of children don't have around the world. I want to ask Mae a question that Michelle actually wrote for you. And she's talking specifically about the Women's Philanthropy Institute that just launched this Women and Girls Index, which is a public database of the country's charities dedicated largely to women's causes, or that are female-led collectives trying to make a change. Out of the more than 1.3 million active charities, only 45,000 are doing this kind of work. And I guess the question that we have is, why do you think women and girls get fewer donation dollars? And is this one of the reasons why you do what you do, volunteering your time in boards or mentoring young women, especially women in STEM?
Well, you know what I think, more of us that are in the field of STEM and those that are philanthropic, we should do more to raise awareness about women and children and our special interests. Oftentimes we get overlooked. Sometimes we express what we want, but are we being taken seriously? Mm-hmm. And so I think for the most part, doing the work and raising the awareness and keeping the momentum up. I think it's more momentum too. How do we keep the momentum of our issues up and front center? Those are pretty much the reason why we have to keep our in front.
Yeah. And Tamra, I know that some of the work that you do also involves helping women break through the cycle of chronic unemployment and poverty. Could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do specifically with that organization?
Sure. Well, Women's Bean Project is a social enterprise. We operate a food manufacturing business that makes products that we distribute all across the country. And what makes it work is we hire women who are chronically unemployed to work in our business. And they work for us for about 7 months. And during that time, we're teaching them the skills that they need to move to mainstream employment. But what qualifies them to be hired by us is that they typically haven't had a job longer than a year in their lifetime, though the average age is 39. So if you think about someone's path, if they're making it to 39 years old, without having had a job longer than a year in their lifetime, often they're repeating a cycle of poverty. They have long histories of addiction and incarceration. Often we're teenage moms, dropped out of school. So we're, low education levels and low experience levels with respect to work. So what we're trying to do is teach the women to work by actually working, so that then they go on to work in our community and are able to keep long-term jobs. So it's not just about the skills of coming to work every day and on time and taking direction. Those are important, of course, but they're also about all the soft skills and things that I think, honestly, women are particularly vulnerable to. So not having learned problem-solving skills or goal-setting skills, or not understanding triggers for past trauma. So we try to address all of those things so that she can go forward and be not just a great employee, but a healthy community member and a better mom. And I think then we're setting her on a different trajectory.
Okay, fantastic. And Mae, could you tell us a little bit more about the work that CKL Engineering is doing in the community?
Well, one of the things CKL does is every year we honor women who are in STEM, because we are engineers and we're engaged in, civil engineering, aviation, transportation. So every year we honor women in science. And so we have them on a panel and we ask them simple questions like, how did you start? How do you go about your day? How do you set your goals for your career, your organization? The second thing we do is we make sure that we provide scholarship. We provide to encourage women to go to college and pursue STEM careers. One of the things for civil engineering is if I take it back to 1999, and I hate to take it 20 years back because then I'm showing my age, but there were only 3 women of color that graduated that year in civil engineering. It was myself and my 2 friends. And so we lost that pipeline of women of color. And so what CKL is aiming to do is keep our projects forward, keep our faces next to the project so we can show them that, hey, you could be a civil engineer and a woman of color and do all these things that Mae Whiteside just did, or my friend Carmen Brown just did, in order to raise the profile of women of color.
Yeah.
So
this actually like touches my heart because my youngest sister is an environmental engineer. Yeah. And she graduated, now I'm showing my age too, but it was easily 15, 20 years ago. And I think there were 3 or 4 other, I mean, we were all Puerto Rican, so I guess we were all women of color. And I'm not sure how many other young women of color have graduated since.
It's difficult because, you know, we do get wrapped up in the business aspect of our firms, and we go, okay, well, let's go and to different colleges, you know, sophomore engineering classes, and I go in and I speak about why I decided to go civil engineering and why you should too. But it's just the constant visiting college campuses, visiting high school. I attend every request to talk about why I do what I do, just so that I can put a face to the profession and they go, okay, I can do it too. If she did it, I know I can.
Yes, that's exactly right. I call it the Michelle Obama effect, right? Like you see a woman out there. It's not just Michelle Obama. It applies to everything, right? Like women, people with disabilities, you know, people of color, et cetera, et cetera. So now I have a question for Tamra before I open it up to the questions for the audience. Tamra, you were in an interview for, I don't know what the interview was for, but you said in an interview, this was Michelle saying that she interviewed you for Take the Lead. And in that interview, you said, quote, "We have a lot of strong female executives who run nonprofits, but it was that perception gap from the profit sector that was diminishing the role. And as women, we need to own that power. The perception of power belongs to us. I can't expect someone to talk to me as the CEO if I don't make them understand that using that title and knowing how I speak about the organization." So it's kind of part of that perception. And the question is, what is it about the work that made you make this commitment, and what advice can you give others who may feel a similar sense of needing to lead in change?
Well, the context in which that came up was when I went from the private sector into the nonprofit sector to become the CEO of Women's Bean Project, and I would have people ask me, so is that, do they pay you for that job? Is that full time? And at the time I was sort of like, well, yeah, it's a job.
Right.
But I think that often, particularly if we're doing something that has heart, I think it's easy for people to think that you're doing it only because it has heart, not because you take it seriously as a profession. Right. And I think that we as women need to own both parts. That I do this work because I absolutely fundamentally believe that when you change a woman's life, you change your family's life. And how lucky am I that I get to do a job where I'm paid and it's a full-time job and I go there every day, but that we get to see an impact on the community. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to always be making that connection, that there are ways we can make an impact, certainly through volunteerism, on our community, and there are ways we can make an impact professionally, and we can bring to bear all of the talents and the resources that we have to that position. But it doesn't minimize who we are or how serious we are or how professional we are. In fact, that's what we're bringing to it that makes us powerful. And I think in general, the nonprofit community struggles with a mentality of scarcity. So it's often this mentality of what we don't have and how there are limited resources and we're in competition for all the resources.
Right.
And I think that carries over to people resources. I prefer to think of things, come at everything from a place of abundance, that there is enough and there's more than enough, and we in ourselves have more than enough. And how great, again, is it that we have an opportunity to bring that enough and abundance to our work.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I want to check on our attendants and check the questions that they might have. I have a participant's question. Her name is Monica, and she asks, I do care deeply about a lot of the wrong that I see happening, especially for women of color at work and even out in public. I don't know where to start, and also I can't just simply write a big check. So I guess the question is, where do I start? Anybody who wants to tackle that?
I would love to. For Monica, pick an issue and give all your time and talent to it. Yeah, I see some things out there that I absolutely can't stand, but I pick one issue and I find others who have the same concerns and want to join in on an issue and try to create kind of a community mechanism that would allow all of us to tackle that one issue together. Mm-hmm. It could be joining a Woman of Color podcast to talk and discuss these issues. It could be actually joining the board of a particular organization that addresses those issues head on and allow you to organize women around that issue. Or you could, you could start something on your own, actually, and around an issue, whether it be a non-for-profit or just a monthly meetup, and discuss that issue head on, whatever that issue is. And I must admit, yeah, you can end up writing hundreds of checks to different non-for-profits, and I just say, take an issue, own it, and run with it. That's what I had done.
That actually takes me to, I guess, a second part of this question. This was not Monica's question, it's mine. What do you say to people that tend to belittle your passions? So as you said, there's just so many bad things happening around the world, and you might have multiple passions and you might want to give either your time or your resources, but you don't, and you feel like, animals is going to be my thing. And then you get people telling you, well, there's children that need help too, and aren't children more important than animals? And then you feel like, wait, but this is my passion. I'm trying to help the world in some way. How do you address those? I want to call it naysayers, although some of them have good intentions.
Well, just consider the source and consider, why they belittle the issue. It could be something that they found in the issue that they didn't feel it warranted attention. Also, in the way you frame your argument, sometimes you have to sell your issue to others to latch onto it and support you in that effort. And I've been belittled in terms of, why do you want to be an engineer? Why do you want to own a firm? Why do you want to all the why are you? And you just, sometimes you just have to,
right.
Just, knock it off your shoulder, because again, you don't know why that person is belittling you. Sometimes you just have to close the chapter on that person that's belittling you and just move on and go with people that do embrace you.
Right. Tamra, would you like to share in some of your insights as well?
Well, I think what a beautiful thing that we each have an opportunity to pursue things we really care about. I mean, all of us, I think, look around and see things we don't like, but not everybody does something about it. Right. And so just because I happen to care about chronically unemployed women and that, mothers, and that doesn't mean that I think everyone has to care about that. But how great that we each have an opportunity to find what we care about and pursue that. And so I think if confronted with that belittling, I think that would be my response. How awesome that I get to choose and you get to choose, and we all have free will to choose what we care about.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make the world better, is if we all focused on one thing, there'd be all those other problems that nobody would be addressing.
Right. It's kind of like killing them with kindness, right? Like,
Yes.
great. So I'm going to solve this one problem, and when I'm done with this, I'll move on to your problem and help you
Yes.
with yours.
Right.
Fabulous. Mae, this question is for you. At last year's Cause the Effect Chicago's Young Feminist Conference, you talked about growing up struggling with your single mother and becoming homeless at 16. Your mother died in 1996 during a severe heat wave in Chicago, and you went on to graduate high school, then to the Illinois Institute of Technology, and now you're working on your doctorate, having also achieved the CEO position in this, STEM world, which is male dominated. Does your personal story influence, your level of giving back, and why, if it does?
It does. Coming from such abject poverty, it forces you to become either an activist in either civics, or to use that as a place where you could draw strength from. Look, if you can get past homelessness, a passing mother, and doing education on your own, you pretty much can do just about anything. I don't know about being an astronaut. I'm a little.
I mean, no, both of you, by the way, but that is just mind-boggling.
But I just had to do what I had to do. I had to survive, and in those spaces, when I had to draw from survival, even in business, I still draw upon those very same spaces for survival. Yeah. That was a big question.
I think that is just incredible. And what's beautiful about not only part of your story, but even your attitude in life is one of positivity. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm strong, and my brain is just as big as anybody else's, and I can go out into the world and do something incredible.
Yeah.
I have another question from the audience. This one is Lindsay asks, I feel like people are always asking me for money for their favorite causes. I have my own favorite causes. How can I politely say no? Tamra, would you like to take that?
Well, I think that saying, I really think that that's a great cause, and I really applaud you for taking that on. And I have the things I also care about. We have a saying within our organization when we meet someone, not everyone's going to be excited about Women's Beam Project. They might respect what we do, but not ultimately want to be involved. And so we have a saying that we bless and release them. So we agree that maybe we're not their cause and that there are other causes, and we agree that they will move on to theirs. And so I think that idea of blessing and releasing them, great. And requesting that in return, that's not my cause, but I applaud the fact that you care about that. I think when you get into this quid pro quo, where you give to your friend's cause and you expect them to give back, and ultimately the people who give to the organization you care about just because you've asked them, A, you feel a sense of obligation in return, but B, they're not giving because they really care about the cause. And so ultimately it's almost a disservice to that organization, because what you want to bring into an organization, whether you are a staff person or a volunteer or a board member, whatever, is people who passionately care about what you do. Right. And again, going back to everyone, the beauty of the world is we all have causes that we care about, and we don't all have to care about the same thing.
It also reminds me that if you have somebody that is giving just because they're kind of forced or pushed into giving, those people are never going to be passionate enough to give back, to give again. And as nonprofits, and we struggle with this at Take the Lead, we definitely need people that are so passionate about this, our mission, that they come back and they tell their friends and hopefully get them excited about learning about the organization in hopes that they make those decisions themselves. But there's no point in, ideally we want people to continue to give back, and whether it is money or resources or, their time and effort. So thank you for that. We are at the halfway point in our broadcast. And so I just wanted to make sure that our audience, just a quick reminder, this is Take the Lead's virtual happy hour. Our guests tonight are Tamra Ryan, CEO of Women's Bean Project, and Mae Whiteside, President and CEO of CKL Engineers. Tonight we have free resources for you. I had completely forgotten about them, but if you stay until the very end, we're gonna share with you this PDF that we created with key Take the Lead blog posts on the power of giving, complete with strategies, advice, and insights on how to give back to the best of your abilities. So make sure that you hop on over to taketheleadwomen.com today and every day for free resources and to access to Women's Leadership Program that will help break through barriers to get your career to the highest level of intention and help your organization reach its diversity and inclusion goals. There is a 50 Women Can Change the World program, which is our signature program that we deliver. It is very immersive. It includes training, coaching, career planning, and a cohort. And it's really an incredible one. The one that we're building on for next year is the 50 Women Can Change the World in Finance in New York City. So you can nominate someone or apply for it yourself just by going to taketheleadwomen.com and clicking on the 50 Women Can little icon. And of course, companies that are committed to gender equality can sponsor these programs or co-sponsor them. All you have to do is email us at takethelead@taketheleadwomen.com. There's a lot of Take the Leads there. Or just tweet our president at Gloria Felt and we'll take it from there. So going back to our amazing guests, with apologies because my co-hostess cannot get in online. She's having a lot of issues with her internet. So it's just gonna be the three of us for the rest of the evening, it seems like. I have a few other notes. Suzanne Lerner, which is the co-founder and president of a fashion brand named Michael Stars. She also happens to be a supporter of Take the Lead. She was interviewed for Philanthropy Woman, and she says, quote, "There's a perception that philanthropy is about having a lot of money to give away. The first thing I tell them is that philanthropy is not about giving money. Don't get me wrong, writing a check, whatever the amount, is important, but giving of yourself matters just as much. Over the years, I have supported organizations in many different ways by serving on boards, making my network available, building partnership with my company, and simply showing up and helping." Which is also part of what, Tamra, you were saying a few minutes ago. Tamra, do you agree, and can you help our participants see what is possible for them to do to give back beyond just writing a check? What else do people in your organizations do, or what you recommend them to do?
Well, I think, again, that goes back to this idea of coming from a place of abundance. Everyone has something to offer, and your responsibility as an organization is to tap into what that person has to offer. That doesn't always mean that it's money, though sometimes it is, or sometimes it's a little bit of money and a lot of time, or sometimes it's, it's a talent. It is, we think of it as time, talent, and treasure. So time might be somebody's semi-retired and they have a lot of time to offer. We have lots of volunteers who come in and they have specific regular tasks that they do. And because they're coming in regularly, they really have assignments. And they're not licking envelopes. They're actually a key part of our organization. And then there's talent. There's lots of specific knowledge that we each have that organizations might benefit from. You name it, we could use it. So we are a manufacturing operation. So we have, right now, for instance, we have a woman who used to work in a manufacturing operation who's helping us implement new equipment into our processes and helping us write the operating procedures for that equipment. And she's doing it entirely on a volunteer basis because she's retired. Yeah. but then I also think that it is, yes, it is about treasure, and it also is important for us to engage people however we can. So someone might start with us as a customer, because selling our product is really important to what we do. Sales create jobs. So our ability to hire women and deliver on our mission really is based on our ability to sell the product. But once they come into our organization, into contact with us, then we think it's incumbent upon us to find other ways to engage them, so that each individual is engaged at every level possible. Maybe they start as a customer, but then maybe they also become a volunteer, and then maybe a donor, but maybe it's $100 a year, or $20 a month. It's a small level. And then they introduce us to their friends. And so it's this idea that we are approaching every person from all the different ways they can give. And hopefully, I don't think we're unique in that. I think lots of organizations look at it that way. Yeah. So maybe sometimes as community members, maybe we're afraid to approach an organization because we think that all they want is our money. But I think that that's not always true. That if we approach an organization with an open heart and open mind about how we might be able to help, I bet we would find lots of ways that an organization would want to engage us.
Yeah, I remember after the, go ahead, please.
And you know, people just want to be a part of something positive, you know? Right. People want to join an effort or an organization or a not-for-profit where they know that the delivery of their talents is in a safe space.
Yes. That
we're going to value their input. And people want to feel valued. They want to feel a part of that they've done something positive in the community or in the world, and organizations are a great place. Take, for example, my business breakfast that I do every year, where I honor 5 or 6 women in STEM. Surprisingly, the committee are not other engineers. They're police officers. They're not the women you think. These are people who view women in STEM as heroes. And they're not necessarily from that background, but they've encountered a woman running in a tech organization, either in food or in science or technology. And they want to hear more about them. They want their daughters, the committee members, they want their daughters to be a part of something that give their daughters an opportunity in a safe space to inquire about science, technology, engineering, and math. So people give because they see a value in the organization, and that our organizations give them a safe space to hand their gift to us. And people are concerned about that transaction. How do we handle that? And how do we value that?
So true. I remember, and I'm about to get political, my apologies for that, but I remember after the elections, it's bound to happen. After the elections in 2016, you might remember that there was a big influx of people donating to like Planned Parenthood or this or that. And I remember just doing a simple Google search, just typing in keywords of things that I found really important as a way more than anything to emote, right? To find a community of people that felt the same way that I felt and wanted to share in their frustrations or happiness or whatever it is you were feeling at the moment, and wanted to, and that's how I found this. I currently volunteer for a couple of organizations. I literally found them that way, just by going to places with people that felt the same thing and had the same type of passions that I did. And my guess is that there's, and at the time I didn't have any money to donate, but I was like, well, here, I'm very organized and I can do this and I can do this other thing. What do you need from me? And I have certain, technical skills, and it was actually really great. Okay, so I am looking at the list of people, and I have another question from another participant. This one is Benton, and I guess she or he writes, I tried to get my company involved in a campaign to raise money for a local shelter and nothing happened. In the future, what do I do? What do I need to do differently? Anyone?
What? They didn't accept it? But
They apparently didn't. Yeah, that's all he's saying, or she is saying. I tried to get my company involved in a campaign to raise money. I mean, if Benton wants to share more details, perhaps the issue had to do with the type of event that he or she was trying to put together.
Or timing. It could have been timing as well. Um, I think that there's certainly a risk that you put yourself out there. And I had a woman say to me once, I've been trying to volunteer for years and years and no one wants my help. And I looked at her and said, well, you just haven't asked the right people.
Exactly.
We would love your help. Yes, and she became a volunteer for us for many, many years after that. But it could also be, maybe it's a little bit like dating, right? Just because you think that that person is very attractive and is someone you might like to date doesn't mean they're available. They're single and they're ready to be dated. So so perhaps that just wasn't of the right match, but that's not to say there wouldn't be the right match.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna ask Benton to share more details if he or she can. And in the meantime, I'll move on to another question from a woman named Cassie. My boss asks everyone to donate to a cause he believes in. I feel real pressure. How can I tell him I want to choose where I give? May?
answer that. Okay. So I happen to be the CEO of my engineering firm, and I think where that question is coming from, there is a corporate strategy in play there that those staff don't know anything about. And that's unfair. I don't take advantage of staff like that. They're my colleagues and they're my friends. So we tend to ask or find out through building relationships with each other, what do you like? I have an engineer that loves golf and 5K. I hate 5K, but I like golf. So we golf together. Those are the things. And I just feel like companies get so caught up in corporate strategy and community outreach and like shove things down their employees' throat. Let it come organically from the grassroots up, and you'll have the best, I guarantee you'll have the best outcome. And you may have to create an anonymous poll or create like a tissue box and put what you think and stick it in there and just say, hey boss, we have a gift for you, and put a nice bowl, little coffee cart, and then just pretty much tell them what you think. I would do it.
Or even potentially, you're just giving me a great idea, because you can actually say, you know what, next time, maybe you give us 3 options.
Yeah.
That way we can, and hopefully they're very different from one another. There's no ulterior motive.
That's an ulterior motive, and there's a corporate strategy at play.
Right.
I'm telling you right now. And they don't know, the company doesn't know how to frame it in a way that makes it positive.
Yeah, that's very true. Tamra, you look like you're about to say something. I just want to make sure that I give you the opportunity.
No, I was agreeing with May.
Fabulous. Okay, I have another question. This one is from Ava. I am a working mom with 2 small children. I just don't see how I can give any more to anyone. Yet I do feel I want to. What do you suggest? I think you have answered that question already.
Yeah. Well, I also think that there is the right time for everything. And I don't think that perhaps at every points in time in our lives are the best time for us to give back and volunteer. Right. And so I think you forgive yourself if now's not the right time also. There are lots of ways to give back. And maybe it is, I think about this even in terms of how I get involved with my kids' school. What works for me is doing fewer bigger things, because showing up frequently at my kids' school in the middle of the day is hard. But there are other moms who prefer to do lots of things, at little commitments over time. And I think we just figure out what works for us, but also forgive ourselves for timing being bad. As long as, I think there's a difference between saying, gosh, now's not exactly the right time, and always saying that and not meaning it. right? Because, and then there's, having an honest conversation with yourself and saying, okay, I have 1 hour a week. And so what can I do that fits within that? Or I want to participate in a toy drive at Christmas because that really resonates with me and it gives me the ability to take my kids along.
Right.
So I think you figure out what works for your time in your life, and you forgive yourself for not, having 20 hours a week to get involved.
Yeah, you are also making me think about those times when I was a college student. I was like desperately broke, and I remember feeling like I'm gonna do this as soon as I have money and time and all this other stuff. And then one day I remember thinking the best gift you can give society is take care of yourself first, right? It's like that whole analogy of the plane that you put the mask on first. Go and get an education. Finish that education, just like Mae did. There's no point in me sitting around and complaining about the fact that I don't have the time or the resources. Let me make myself more available in another 5 years, and I may be able to give 10 times more than I'm ever able to give at this particular stage in my life.
Right. And there are times I think where you have more an abundance of time and less money, and other times in your life where you have more of I mean abundance on a relative scale, but abundance of money and less of time. And that's fine. I think everyone can decide that for themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm not a big fan of guilt. Of feeling bad about what you're able to do or not able to do. I think we just, have a realistic conversation with ourselves and do what feels right and live with that.
And guilt becomes a crutch on all aspects of life, right? Is that whole idea that, well, it's just that I'm not fit enough, so I can't do that thing, or I don't have a partner, so I can do that other thing. And there's always a reason why. There's always I'm gonna feel bad about my situation, rather than, well, this is my situation and it can change at any moment for the better, because we happen to live in a country where all kinds of not great things are happening, but all kinds of opportunities are given to us. And it's just up to us to find the community, the connections, and the strength to hopefully get the support needed and get out into the world and do something better. Mae, I wanna ask you, what advice do you have for the women listening today about how they can choose what they want to be involved in? There are so many options, particularly if you have children in school or children, what Tamra said, there might be the school itself is asking you for all kinds of time and resources. How did you choose how did you go about choosing your path, and how do you advise others on how to choose theirs?
Well, how I chose mine, obviously I drew upon my own personal background as a way to kind of advocate the issues I care about. Choose what you care about. You would actually benefit more because you're more prone to do your research about that issue or topic that you care about. You're more likely to want to take those steps further, either to advocate in your community, on a legislative level, join a national organization and make that case at the U.S. Capitol. You'll be more prone to want to do that. And for me, my civic engagement took me, and I hadn't talked about this entire broadcast, but my own civic engagement led me to want to start an academy to help with diverse key campaign staff. Because the issues that I faced growing up as a kid, chronic homelessness, lack of economic opportunity, business opportunities, and growing up on welfare, those things made me want to create an outlet for those issues to be worked out through an academy, so that when we do send legislators to the state capitol or to local office, that those issues that we grapple with are taken with them on a notepad per se, and say, yeah, we're backing you because these are the 10 things that has to be addressed. And that only comes from something that you care about.
Yeah.
So I just say, pick the things that drive you and those that you care about. You're more apt to put more passion, research, and time into it, and money eventually.
Very true. Very, very true. And Tamra, you've been working at leading Women's Bean Project for over a decade. Is that correct?
16 and a half years, yeah.
16 and a half years. What advice would you give someone who wants to start an organization or start leading a nonprofit and get connected to their own philanthropic mission or vision or passion?
Well, that's the thing. I think the first part is what you said last, which is find something you care about first, a cause that you care about, something you deeply believe in, and start there. I began my involvement with the Bean Project as a volunteer. And this isn't necessarily the most logical path, but I think that there are things to recommend it. I really loved the business model. I loved this idea that there was a business, and the better the business did, the more women could be served. And that was how the mission was advanced. And so I started volunteering using my professional skills at the time. My background is sales and business marketing and business development. And I went on to the sales and marketing committee. And I did that really with an open heart to try to help the organization grow. The position of CEO came open, and I thought I knew the perfect candidate, and that was my girlfriend, Sarah. So I tried to talk her into applying for the job until she, according to her, I went on and on about what great place it was. And she said, if you think it's so, why don't you do it? And as I think back to that time, what I was reflecting onto Sarah was really what I loved and what I felt passionate about. And fortunately, she served as a great mirror and pushed me to do it, and instead of her. She still reminds me today that that I owe it all to her.
And when the world is a better place because she pushed you to do what you needed to do. That leads me to, I guess, the second to last question I wanted to ask both of you, and that is an issue of time. Because just reading your bio alone, I'm like, I will never complain about anything again. I mean, you are leading organizations, and you're in boards, and you are, helping your own community, and you're starting there's a lot going on in your lives. How, to myself and to everybody that's listening, how do you manage time, energy, resources as you lead your organizations?
A great scheduler.
So what are we talking about specifically?
Microsoft Outlook calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I get to look at a graphical representation of my life. And that is, I know that I have these things scheduled on my calendar, and I can actually plan for it. Right. I'll put it on my calendar, and I can get to see how I actually spend my time. Mm-hmm. And when I have emergencies, I shift things. But I know for me, in my business, my admin, cut checks, deal with personnel, HR,
right,
clients, vendors. Sometimes I have a Friday where that's my catch-all, end-all. And then I just kind of, schedule everything out. So a great schedule and a planner, but most of all, my goals kind of shape what my schedule looks like.
So even if you're not the most organized human being, that will help you see your entire day or your entire week. What about you, Tamra?
Well, I think we make time for the things that we think are important. Right. So to exercise is very important to me. So I am up at 5 every morning, and because then it's done, and I feel virtuous the rest of the day. But that's when I know it's going to happen. When I was writing my book, I wrote every night from 9 to 10:30, because that's when my kids were in bed, and I knew there would be time. Not because it was the most productive time of day, but it was something that was important enough to me to have on my calendar every day. So I think it's really having a clear picture of what's important to you, because if you're not finding time for it, maybe it's not important. So it's that, and also I've learned that I am at my best when I surround myself with people who are talented and who complement the things that I am not particularly good at. And so in my time as a leader, I've learned that the best leader is surrounded by people who pick up things that, that are not my skills, or certainly not my talents, but they are. And so I have a great team of people. So it's not always, maybe I'm the face of the organization, but I'm, alongside me are all these other people who really, frankly, I couldn't do anything without.
Keep it all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And believe it or not, one of the things that work for me is I'm a great planner, and I'm very organized with my day. I plan everything, even the times that are fun. I put it in my calendar. Otherwise, just like Tamra says, the things that are more important might happen every day, but the things that are also important, just not as fun or as, that you can see them, they fall through the cracks kind of thing. If I'm not scheduling them, then they tend to never happen. So putting them on the calendar, even if it's just time for an extra hour of sleep on Saturday, goes on the calendar. Otherwise, it might not happen. So we have just a few more minutes left. In fact, only about 4 minutes. So I just wanted to make sure that the audience gets to learn a little bit about you, where to find you, how to learn a little bit more about your organization and the amazing work that you guys are doing. And if you have a book or a podcast or something that you want to promote, this is your time to share it with our audience. So whoever wants to go first, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Mae.
Oh, okay. They said always be ready. Well, about me, right? And okay, so I am a licensed civil engineer in the state of Illinois and Georgia. My organization is CKL Engineers, LLC. We are a civil transportation, construction management engineering firm engaged in aviation, rail, mass transit, safety, highway design. And our organization, 10 years in, we plan to grow in the Midwest and the South as well. And we're looking to hire. We're looking for great talent to join our creative, solution-oriented team of thinkers and planners to grow our influence.
And where can people reach out to you if they want?
You can, well, I personally have a Facebook page, Mae Whiteside PE. Our website is CKL Engineers, LLC. You can also find us on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram.
At CKL Engineers?
CKL Engineers,
right.
LLC.
And we're gonna put those links on the recording email that we sent in 24 hours.
Awesome.
Thank you. And what about you, Tamra?
Well, the easiest way to find me is through womensbeanproject.com, and that's our primary website. My own Twitter handle is at Tamra Ryan, and I have a book called The Third Law, which refers to Newton's third law of motion. So that's hopefully appealing to you, Mae. And it is really about my journey at Women's Bean Project and all the women I've learned from and their stories. Again, going back to this idea that I think I have a responsibility to help tell their stories. And you can learn more about that book also at womensbeanproject.com.
Wonderful. So we'll share those links as well. So before I let you go, I have just one tiny question for each of you. And that is, what's your go-to song or quote that gets you revved up every morning? Whoever can think of it first can tell me. It doesn't have to be the one that you've always thought of. It could be the one that seems to resonate right this moment.
You know, the first one, I'll just say the one that comes to my mind, and it was, I don't know if this is true, but it was attributed to John Wayne, of all people. And the quote is, excuse the chauvinism of the quote, but it's, the measure of a man's character is what he would do if he knew he'd never be found out. What I love about that is it can be interpreted both ways, right? What would you do negatively, but what would you do positively? If you knew no one was ever going to know, what would you do?
Well,
What about you, Mae?
Rick Ross, every day I'm hustling.
I love it.
I like rap music. I'm sorry.
Literally on every virtual happy hour, we have at least one song quote. That's why we can't say quotes anymore, because songs have a way to get into our hearts and souls.
Yeah, and then, but then of course, biblical. You can't put rap and some of that the same. But I go by faith. Faith is my thing. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. If it wasn't for faith, I don't know where I would be. Quite honestly, if I looked over my life, I don't think if I didn't have faith and just believed in myself, because you have to believe. You have to believe things will work out. You have to put out in the universe that those things that you know of yourself will come back, and you would. If you don't believe in yourself, who else will? It's all centered on faith. And I had to have a whole lot of that, this much, in order to carry the load that I carry.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. With that, that's a perfect little cherry on top. I thank you both so much for taking the time and sharing all of your incredible wisdom and your stories and information about your businesses with the rest of us. And I guess we will see you all again after Thanksgiving. So this is a time for giving and for giving thanks. So I thank you for being grateful enough to allow me to host you tonight. This was an incredible virtual happy hour. So I thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining Take the Lead Presents Virtual Happy Hour. Be sure to tune in again next month. Remember, it's the second Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. 1 hour, once a month, to boost your career. Until then, power to you.